What's up, guys? This is TheKephas. Today we're going to check out the macro that I've created for Protection Paladins starting out in the War Within. So the first thing we want to do, as always, is open up our talent tree here and you can see what I've got going on. This is a standard Mythic Plus build that I actually got off of Wowhead, and this one works really well. I didn't have to make any alterations to it to make it function better in the macro. It's incredibly straightforward, easy to understand. The Protection Paladin rotation is very simple to execute and even simpler to macro. So this one I'm very happy with. So there are a couple things to go over. On the left side, it's just, of course you're going to get your usual stuff. We've taken all the goodies down here at the bottom with Divine Toll. I do avoid Divine Purpose. It's not entirely necessary. There are better options. And, there's no need to have any unpredictable procs happening if we don't need them. So it's not necessary. I'm going to avoid it. On the right side, we've got all the stuff we need. And there are some abilities that we were adding in here that, are optional either way. But obviously, your defensive cooldowns like Ardent Defender and Guardian of the Ancient Kings, though they could in theory be macroed, we're obviously not going to be including those in the macro. But Eye of Tyr is another one we've taken, and we'll look at that one as well. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty standard stuff. Nothing too crazy added in here. We'll look at our sequences, and right at the top here we have Prot. This is our all-in-one macro for Protection Paladins, and you can go ahead and we can look and see what we've got going on here. So we have our block type loop with a priority going a reverse priority actually. So 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. I like using reverse priorities. It gives the abilities at the top of the list more opportunities to be used, but it also tries to use the next ability on the list sooner, so that way it feels like the macro is going off more. At least in my experience, in a lot of cases it feels that way, but I'm just kind of messing around with stuff right now. So it's going to do a repeat of 2, and then it's going to break out of this loop. We'll look at what's on the outside of the loop here in a bit. But inside the loop, at the top of the priority, we have Avenger's Shield. This ability can be reset, so we want to try to make sure that we're using it as much as possible. It will probably be used the most often in theory, and we want to make sure that we use it as soon as possible. So with that, we've included Shield of the Righteous. This is our main holy power spender, and the cool thing is that Shield of the Righteous is an ability that... Shield of the Righteous is an ability that is off the global cooldown. Got distracted there. So that way, you can use it even if you activate a global cooldown, which means that we can include it in this line here with Avenger's Shield. That also applies to Sentinel as well. So we'll be using that one. And then, of course, we have Start Attack, making sure that we are using our auto attacks as much as possible, making sure that we activate those, I should say. But either way, all this will be used the most often, and that's why we've put these in with Avenger's Shield. So we'll keep all those on cooldown as much as possible. Next up, we have Judgment, next in the priority. After that, we have Blessed Hammer. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Hammer of Wrath. Keep that one on the outside because it is the ability that will be used least often in the overall fight, because you're going to use it under specific circumstances. So the macro will still try to use it a lot, but not as often as everything else. So even though it is a higher priority once it's available, it's a lower priority for the macro overall because it won't be needing to be used as much. So the idea there is that we're not spending too much time trying to use an ability throughout a given fight that we can't use nearly as often as everything else. Okay, that's the idea there. And then, of course, on the outside of this loop, we have our longer cooldown abilities. I like to take abilities that have longer cooldown, usually 30 seconds or longer, and put those outside of the priority, and giving more time for short cooldown abilities inside the priority list to be used. That way the macro is not trying to use these abilities nearly as often as what's on the inside. So Eye of Tyr is first with a combat line in here, making sure that we're not accidentally using this when we're out of combat or not in range. So this is an option. I almost didn't put this in because it does have some defensive aspects to it, but it's a relatively short cooldown, 45 seconds, and it does do a decent amount of AoE damage. So I went ahead and included it in here. Feel free to remove it if you want to, just depending on how you feel, if you like to use it more defensively or you just don't like how the macro uses it. And then of course, last up we have Divine Toll, which has a longer cooldown as well, so the macro is going to get to that. So what's going to happen here is that the macro is going to cycle through the priority list twice, then break out of the loop, use or try to use these longer cooldown abilities, and then go back into the priority list. That way the macro will spend more time trying to use the abilities in the list and less time trying to use these abilities that have a longer cooldown and thus won't needing to be used as often. Now, you might be wondering, where is Consecration? That's another ability, and in theory, I could put Consecration in this macro. I mean, it's not even a theory. I could absolutely put Consecration in this macro, and it would be fine, because Consecration is an ability that has a cooldown, and it would not bog down the macro at all. But in my experience, having ran several dungeons using these macros with Protection Paladin, this is just years of experience. What happens is when you're spamming away at the macro, you're running around, you just use it sometimes when you don't really want to use it. You'll just drop it down wherever, and then you have to move and you're not going to be standing in it. So I like to have a little bit more control of where I drop Consecration personally. So while it would be easier and I would consolidate everything in this macro, I feel like it's better to keep it outside of the macro. So it's up to you. You can add Consecration in the macro if you want to, and you probably for the most part will be fine. It's just a question of, would you like to get a little bit more performance out of your character using this macro, or would you like to simplify things even further? And that's just, that's a threshold that every individual has to decide. But you can easily add Consecration in, just create a new block, cast Consecration. I would probably put it on the outside of the priority list, but you could even put it on the inside at the bottom of the list, because it does have a relatively short cooldown. So hopefully that makes sense. Manage Consecration on a separate button. It's a little bit easier to get more value out of your Consecration. Otherwise, the macro is going to manage everything else, of course. Shield of the Righteous is going to be getting used a lot. Usually as soon as you hit 3 holy power, you're going to be spending it. That's never going to be a problem. Obviously, the only downside to that is if you're in a situation where you would want to use Word of Glory instead of Shield of the Righteous, then that's probably not going to get to happen at all, like literally at all. The good news though is you're probably not going to want to do that, because you are going to be getting Shining Light procs fairly often, and you'll be able to spend your Word of Glory on that. That is a much better way to spend Word of Glory and not spend your holy power on it, and spending it on that Shield of the Righteous, doing more damage and also giving yourself more protection as well. So that's usually, the good news is that's usually what you want to do in most situations anyways. But in those rare instances, it could pose a problem. So again, it's up to you. You could remove Shield of the Righteous from the macro and then spend your holy power manually if you want to. But again, I've ran lots of dungeons with this, and I've never had to spend holy power on on Word of Glory. But I also do basic not difficult dungeons and content, so I don't have a whole lot of expertise when it comes to like high-end playing. But then again, if you're going to be doing high-end stuff, you may not want to use a macro. It's up to you, but I'm just saying. But this will get you through, and in my experience, it does pretty good. I mean, I think you could probably raid with this. I really do. Like it does everything pretty well, and I have a lot of fun with it. Protection Paladin's really fun to play, really easy to play, and for the most part, it keeps everything on cooldown as it becomes available and does a pretty decent job. So if you'd like to use it, feel free to import it into your game. Don't forget to keybind it, and if you do use it, please let me know what you think about it in the comments below. With all that being said, I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button, and feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is TheKephas. Until next time.